All right, peace and love. So thank you all for joining us as we enter into another session that is really focused around on the voice of our students and some of the amazing things that our dope educators are doing in the classroom. We are here for the 27th annual, once again, African American, and Caribbean Studies Summer Institute. And we have a real interesting session for you. And this particular session, this is going to show an example of what this work looks like in the classroom. And this is going to be fully facilitated by one of our educators, Miss Julianne Polito, and also some of the students at Conniston Middle School. So they're going to talk about a project that they use, and they've made sure that they infuse and integrated African and African American studies across curriculum subject areas to do an excellent project-based assignment right here within our local community to highlight and commemorate the historical contributions of African Americans and also the experience of African Americans right here in our own backyard. So without further ado, I don't want to hold back and I don't want to take up the time, and I just want to make sure that we highlight the voices of our educators and also our students in this one session. So Ms. Polito, I want you to take it over from here. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Knowles. So it's really been a pleasure for me to be putting this thing together from the beginning, which is involving other teachers by my side, getting a grant through the Education Foundation, and actually it began from your own Summer Institute last year, Mr. Knowles, when you had some of the local people presenting about the African American history here in West Palm Beach and their efforts to make a historic landmark site out of the tragedy of the Okeechobee Hurricane of 1928. Given that we're in a pandemic year, that we had to cut our year short last year, that students had to start this year with very limited access to other kids, to other people, to a normal kind of go to middle school for the first time or return to it, I thought it was a great way to embrace the losses that we feel on ourselves, right? Our own losses and our own sense of isolation and our own limits and limitations based on how this pandemic has affected us. So that's what inspired this project. So what we did with it was I wrote a grant and the teachers joined me in it, and we together developed some curriculum around the history of Florida, to look at how different groups were treated at different times, to set the context and background for Jim Crow era in Florida in the 20s. And that's when the Okeechobee Hurricane happened. So you guys will remember, I'm going to present now a little bit of what we did. This is actually what it looks like now, because we've gone there and we've planted these shrubs. But what we did to get started on this project was to take a look at a brief history of Florida, the original people of Florida, and their livelihood and their Floridian culture of the time. That would be the various Indians. We studied a little bit about how they lived here until the explorers landed and started infiltrating the lands and changing life for them in a very drastic way. But we also talked about how the European explorers came and what the push and pull factors were for why they were looking for more land, why they were looking for gold, what they were trying to do in their explorations to expand their empires, and for others, why it was a good idea to leave their countries and seek maybe higher grounds, hopefully, or a new land to start afresh. We also looked at the colonial era and how Florida is the forgotten 14th colony, how it went through the hands of the British and the Spanish and the French and the British again, and looked at how Native Americans were treated and how African slaves were treated differently by under Spanish rule and under British rule. So in the end, it was the Brits who won Florida, and the harshness that was harsh enough to be enslaved, but it was worse under British rule, a lot more strict and a lot more harsh. So we went through that history. Then we learned about some Africans who made their history work for them, a Haitian and an African woman who actually created their own plantation here in Florida and were the owners of it in the 1800s. We looked at that video for some local history. And then, as we did with all of these efforts, there was a list of discussion questions. So I would just put out to everybody here, do you guys remember studying this? And do you remember what moved you about this part of the history?
Yes.
What moved you?
The fact that many African Americans were treated unfairly.
Uh, the fact that while even though some people like during slavery, some people had it good like under Spanish rule, it was still unfair and it was still slavery, and most people didn't really have very many rights and weren't treated like actual people. They were treated like property.
Right, and more, even more so under British rule, right? Because there was a moment in time where Africans and Indians and Spanish could live side by side in their separate communities and still get along in some ways, right? They were allowed some freedoms and allowed to develop, and they did to some degree, but that was pretty much squashed when the Brits came in, right? So, oops, sorry. So after that, we looked at more like the 20s, right? The roaring 20s, and looked a lot at the arts and culture and literary developments of the roaring 20s, and looked at it in terms of social class. And this is when our study really turned into the study of two classes, two groups of people, the whites and the blacks. So what was life like for them? How was it separate? How was it integrated? How was it different? And we learned that the blacks started vaudeville, right? I mean, they had their own vaudeville shows, which is kind of hidden here. And we looked at some of these clips to see how the blacks were actually a major part of that party time, that fun after World War I time, when people started wanting to have more fun, going out, jazz comes around. And then we looked at how whites imitated blacks for fun, as a joke, for comedy, I mean, on the stage. And that was kind of rough. But then we looked even more closely. Also, we talked a little bit about the Great Migration and the paintings and work from Jacob Lawrence. And we listened to the footage of these people talk about their experiences. So moving on, we looked at some local history. One of my favorites, Zora Neale Hurston. And she did all this incredible work. She was part of the Harlem Renaissance. She wrote poetry. She wrote folk novels. She did investigative journalism in our own Florida, here in Eatontown, where she was from. And there's a whole monument to her there. But yet she still, with all that fame and all that achievement, she died alone in an unmarked grave as a maid to a person in Fort Pierce. So it's like you can never get ahead. You get ahead, you do good work, and then you're still back there. So we looked at Florida's evolution and the propaganda around the advertising era, bringing people to Florida, trying to develop it economically as a vacation spot. And in looking at that, again, looked at the discrepancies between whites and blacks, rich and poor, the tin can tourists who like eat food out of a tin can, that's where that comes from, the development of the railroads, what Miami Beach looked like before people moved there. And then we look at Florida, what happens when you try to reach out and branch out on your own and create your own communities, and then use by law the amendments that come into place. And by law, now you're allowed to vote. And what happened to them when they tried to assert themselves voting? So some of you offered a lot of insights into this and shared resources, and we discussed that. In our classroom, we had a topic section where they can post things that they found themselves and of their shared interests. So we talked a lot about that, and that was really profound to me, because that's when you guys really stepped up and you really started asking a lot of questions and posting a lot of work that you discovered on your own. So that made this an even better, deeper collaboration of interests, curiosities, desire to learn, and a desire to know. what happened and how it happened. These were some of the discussion questions we had. What would you guys say was your feeling about that part of this time that we studied together? What stood out for you then, or what moved you in that time? Please just unmute yourself and speak. Thanks.
One thing that stood out to me was the minstrel shows that like people would have making fun of black characters in like jazz singers, because the thing is, a lot of people like going back into slavery and racism. A lot of people like knew this, like it was a bad thing and it was offensive. They just didn't care about it like as much, or they didn't care about it at all, to the point where like it was just irrelevant to them.
So that indifference is really painful, right? In some ways, it's almost worse than having an opinion one way or the other, because you can work with someone who stands their ground, right? But you can't really do much if someone doesn't really care at all. Anyone else? What moved you about this period of time? This is the beginning. This is the context under which the tragedies that occurred after Lake Okeechobee overflowed and flooded the areas, and all those 3,000 people died. So what moved you about this portion of our studies, and what do you remember about it, or what would you like to know more about?
Well, to answer your question, all of this combined really moved me, but then what really did the most to move me was when I realized that the working class that were, working hard for the future of Florida, and all of their lives were lost during this hurricane, and they were not commemorated, they were not identified, the bodies were not identified. They didn't even take the time to do that, and they just put them in a mass burial site. And to be honest, before we did the remodeling, I didn't think it looked that appealing, and that's what was really sad. If you're not gonna identify the bodies, at least like make the area look nice. But they didn't even do anything for those bodies, and they didn't commemorate them or anything. And that's what mainly moved me about this. So I really wanted to make it look nice because that's the least we could do.
That's beautiful, Leo. Thank you. I think that's honorable and certainly deserving, right? Someone else, tell us what your thoughts were and how this moved you to the next phase.
I think it's nice to remember those people that died in the hurricane, because people have to know that they suffered that event, and we have to do something pretty to remember those people. You know what I mean?
Definitely know what you mean. That's true. And thanks to the 28 Storm Coalition, the Civic group who actually got it to be recognized, right? That's where we step in. They came first. They said we have to do something. These people this is a mass burial site. We have to at least commemorate it in some way. And they turned it into a historic landmark. So I just want to present a little bit more, because your beautiful work comes pretty much next. And I don't want anyone to miss that. We looked at local histories. These are some great resources of the hurricane. We studied the science of hurricanes. Ms. Eck presented. These are resources about how the hurricane happened. And then Ms. Tomas brought us to how to develop a garden. So in developing the gardens, we looked at types of gardens. We looked at memorial gardens. We looked at how to design gardens. Some of you knew a lot already and have had experience. We had some limitations. We had to choose things that were really about native Florida plants and easy, not requiring too much water, so that they could be well maintained. And then we had some plots and some sketches and some ideas for how to organize clusters around our garden designs. But you guys said that you needed to go there. You said we need a trip. We need to go there and experience it and see what it's like. And Leo, you spoke about it. You were surprised that it wasn't so great. It wasn't so beautiful, right? So guys, speak up and talk about this. Is you in your planning stages. talking and thinking and walking through the park and sketching down your ideas. What did you think about this trip?
Um, I was just, my thought process was during that time when I was walking around and I was just seeing everything that hadn't been maintained or hadn't been kept nice and didn't look nice. It was just really disappointing. So I was just thinking through that whole time, okay, what can I do to make this look better and make it look nice and really be able to honor those people who lost their lives during that hurricane because that was just terrible.
Thank you, Len. That was really important. And we all kind of felt that way, right? It's just moving when you're there. It's different than looking at the pictures, right? So how did you feel? Someone else speak up about how they felt when they were.
I was thinking that, how it was really important for us to go to to do this. Not only was it memorable and cherishable for those who have died in this hurricane, but it also helped us out to like bring out the best in us and help out with such an important activity and project.
That's so great. So it brought out the best in you, Cindy. I'm so glad you said that. That's really it. I feel great hearing that. That's more than I could have hoped for in doing this work. Noelle, you had a question? Or you raised your hand, you wanted to share it? Guys, just take your turns and speak up.
I think that when I was walking around, I was thinking about how best to appreciate the people who lost their lives there. And I think the project helped me learn a lot about which plants are important to use, where and how they grow best, and a lot more about what to do with them. And so I think using that information, I just try to find a way to lay it out so that it would be both respectful and also beautiful for people who lost it.
So everything that you said, Noelle, tells me, I mean, a lot of thought and feeling and care went into these ideas and into your designs and into your choices with very purposeful intentions of bringing some respectability to this place and some recognition for those who weren't recognized, right? So please, we haven't heard from everybody. Just please go ahead and speak up. I want to say, Sophia, it was my first time meeting you in person because we've been in COVID and we've been on virtual meetings. And at that site, when we got there, you were just great. You're like, oh, this has to go. Oh, and that has to be replaced. Oh, and we have to fix this here. And talk a little bit about that, your first impressions and what you thought needed to happen.
Well, for one, I wanted to restore the dignity that has been stripped away by those people who've been buried there. So I wanted to try my best to make it look as good as possible. So I wanted to restore what was broken or what was going to break or what didn't look good, because I wanted it to look good for those who died there because their dignity matters too.
Absolutely. Sheree, what was your experience there? How would you say you experienced this trip? You were really serious and you walked around and you like listened and you talked and you sketched, and how did it impact you being there on this field trip?
It was very life-changing, like to understand what those people went through and to know, like, and to feel how they felt, and just to do something that's like honorable and respectful at the same time, make the place look better.
Very good. Annie, we haven't heard from you either. So tell us, Annie, Corey, speak up. Max, tell us about your thoughts, your experiences.
Well, I had never heard of the 1928 hurricane storm until I was invited into this club. So I thought it was really interesting to learn about what had happened during that storm and what I can do to help make it more memorable and make it noticed.
Beautiful. What about you, Corey?
it's important that I felt that it was important that we show these people, the people who had died, were it's in, I felt that it was important that we showed and made it look nice and made it nicer to remember the people who had died and who were just buried it without any memory. I felt that it
Yeah.
was good, make it look better.
Yeah, definitely. And you and Leo went to it. You were like unstoppable. You had all these ideas and you were just like planting, talking and thinking and designing and sketching. And you had all these ideas for what you wanted to do, mostly around the actual burial site, right? To liven that up and bring life back there, like in the flowers that you chose. I'm going to share some of your sketches. We haven't heard from Max. Max, tell us. And I just so appreciate you guys being here because we have a mix of people here who are English learners.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we just love to hear from you.
Well, I think that for me it's important that project because it was African Americans and well, I'm Hispanic and they are African American, so for me it is important and that people deserve it. That you know the the place looks nicer.
It does look nicer. And you're right, but Hispanics, as they say, were also some of the people who perished, like the ones who were the
Yeah,
migrant workers, right? So we share that history, right? They share that history.
yeah.
Juliana, you were there in the planting stages and you were there for many of the lessons and classes. How did you respond to this being part of this group and the designs that you created?
I was surprised that the African Americans didn't get like their names on their grades. And I got like my ideas from your resources that you put out there and other people's resources. And I think that it has to be noticed more.
Yeah, I think everybody agrees. Is anyone who needs to say or wants to say something more at this point before I show off your beautiful work? Okay.
Actually, can I say something?
Absolutely.
I just wanted to point out how it's really great doing this because when I first went there, I know people are doing what they can, but when I saw that only one plaque of information with literally, um, Miss Polito gathered more information about this whole storm than the plaque of information had, and there was only one plaque with information, and it was not in the greatest spot. I would probably not even notice it if I just like if somebody else didn't point it out. And well, it's really unfair how they didn't get some information, and like if you're just going there, you need more background information about why this is so important, why this signifies so much. So I really felt that it's nice to it's a nice to help in this place, so you can gather more information and it can be a nicer place, and people and there's more recognition that people know what happened here, and people commemorate it, and people respect the people who were the working class and who died.
You're absolutely right. I'm so glad you brought it up because you said that right away. You're like, this is terrible. There's only one plaque. I said, what should you have? What would you suggest? Right. And you said, well, there should be more. It should be what happened before, what happened after, what's going to happen. There should be a lot more of these plaques. So, and that led to someone else saying, well, there are these interactive plaques, these historic plaques, when you walk around a historic site where you could press a button and someone can narrate a little bit about the story. So this is more work to be done, right? Is to like develop the story better, the history, and make it more known, more public. And someone else in the group said there should be a public shared library where people can go and get books and read books about it. And that I know is one of the goals of the Storm Coalition, is to have that happen. So I have it to be a learning center and a resource center. So I'm going to present again real quickly because I don't want to, these beautiful, your sketches, these are just some of them. You remember these guys? Lana?
Yes.
Yep.
Yes.
And Annie and Karina and Cindy and Noelle and Corey and Leo and Juliana and Cameron and Max. And if you drew them together, this is what it would look like if we had our ideal. This is what it would look like entering. And this is what it would look like entering into the grave site. And in the corner, the far left corner, would be the butterfly garden that Noelle put all those clusters into. These corners would be beautifully filled with flowering shrubs. This is planting day. Did you all see this?
Yes.
I just love watching it. Oops. So there's only, the next part is the results. This is how it looks now. I have to say, Noelle and Cameron, you were like the dynamic duo. You dug out the dying bougainvillea plant here up against this post, and you planted this one. You did like, we kept the wood for a while. We wanted to preserve it because it was like such a feat to dig so deep and get that out of the way. You remember this? You guys planted this? The bougainvilleas inside and the coleus. And this sign back here, we added that. That was part of our gift to the park, was to announce that this is a sacred space and to try to encourage people to keep it clean and neat and beautiful. And Juliana, Sheree, you guys helped to put this beautiful stuff together here. When this comes into full growth, it's just going to be so gorgeous. As you walk into the entrance, I have to say, we went back, Cameron and Noelle, the troopers, went back and we planted more. So you guys will recognize the salvia here in these places by the pillars. Juliana, your idea for flowers along this fence turned into these oleanders, and they're blooming. If you guys ever go by there, they're blossoming. It's so beautiful. The firebird plants that are behind the gravesite will grow really large and fluffy. We have them here on campus at Conniston Middle School. They're very hardy hedges. They'll give a lot of beauty to that part of it. And then this is the entrance excuse me, to the mass burial site itself. Good job, girls. And finally, this is all of you in your t-shirts in a blurry picture. I don't think we could thank you enough for your investment in this. You gave your hearts, your great ideas, and you really shared. Like when you guys started, Cameron, you were like incredible, but others too, you like really posted materials and resources that everybody could look and read about and learn about and share. And that's what this was about. This is a civic adventure, right? This is about doing something for the community and being a group, a collaborative group to make it happen. And you made it happen. You made history, guys. How do you feel about that?
Amazing.
It's good to know that we got to do something to help people be noticed and seen.
Absolutely.
It feels really nice because My whole reason for starting this project was because like I wanted to help these people get recognized because it was like unfair the way they were treated and the way they were treated after death. And I feel like death is like a sacred thing and it should be respected. So they should like be able to have a nice resting place, final resting place. And I'm very happy like of what we did because I feel like this time next year all the flowers are going to be in bloom, everything is going to be growing beautifully, and it's going to be really nice. And I'm very like happy with the progress we've made, but I do feel like there's still more I can do, or like more that needs to be done, because these people aren't the only people who are treated like this, and there are others who are in similar situations like them where people are just dumped in mass burial sites and people are not respected after they die, and people are not respected while they're alive because there are still many instances of like racism and stuff in the present, as we all know. So it's still very very troubling, and it's still not something our society has been able to overcome yet, but I'm hopeful for the future.
Thank you, Cameron. That was beautifully said. Piper, please tell us. You were so dynamic. You were there and you've been involved ever since. You did photography. You made it into our yearbook. You were planting. You came with like such energy and enthusiasm. Please share. You haven't spoken yet.
Oh, thank you very much. I personally didn't know about the club and the project until the planting day, and I felt that that was like really important for the community and everything. And to go there, and before we started planting, I saw the place, and it looked almost abandoned when we first arrived. And I feel like that it was really good to go in and plant and, like you've said, like planting and stuff and making the place look beautiful again, the site look beautiful was really our way of like respecting them and paying like respects and our contribution to the area and respecting them.
That's so beautiful. Thank you. And thank you for all your talents that you brought with you. You just dove right in and you joined right in and you did some great shots for our yearbook here in Conniston. So if you were to say, what would you like it was, you can speak, Cameron. Yeah. You can unmute yourself and just say it.
Oh yeah, the way the park was left made me really. It was really sad to see how the park was before we started like cleaning up and planting, because there was just trash everywhere. And when I first saw that park, because I've been living by that park my whole life, and when I first saw that park, I didn't know it was a memorial. I didn't think it was. I didn't see any signs of it being a memorial because they were all covered with like vines and stuff, and it just looked like a messy park. It was just really sad to see how people treated these people. There was trash everywhere, and it was really sad.
I
Right.
agree with Cameron because when I drove by it, I was like, is this it? Is this not it? Because I didn't see any sign that it was or any part showing that it was being remembered. And so it felt really nice to do something good about it and just show people that we care about what happened and we want to help represent these people.
And Annie, I wanted to tell you that your idea for having a better sign right at the entrance and for having jasmine around the sides of the posts when you first enter, because you want it to smell good and be sweet and beautiful when you walk in, to make it so I'll never forget that. I mean, that was your plan and your idea to create that. I'm like, can we please plant this jasmine here? So it hasn't left my mind, and I'm thinking how we can fit it in, maybe in another round of more beautification. But
Thank you.
you're welcome.
Yeah, I think visiting the site was pretty depressing because it was brutal and oppressive at the time, and not treated with the respect it deserved. But I think it was also hopeful because it showed me and us that we could give the people buried there the appreciation that they truly deserved.
Very well said. Anyone else like to share any last thoughts of what you want to remember or what you want people to think? Sophia?
I feel like as a human, you deserve rights, and I feel like they deserve the right to have a nice burial. And they were just stacked upon bodies and bodies and bodies. That's not like dignifying. It's just horrible how it was. So I felt like it was our job to make it more beautiful, and that's the least we could do because everybody deserves having a nice burial site.
Who could argue? I totally agree. Is there anything you think should happen next?
Well, I feel like even though like we worked on it and stuff, I feel like there should still be more effort by like the city and like the government officials to keep up these parks because yeah, they put like plaques and stuff up, but they didn't try to like cut back the vines so you could actually see the plaques or anything, and they didn't like cut back the weeds or anything. They just like were like, oh yeah, we put one plaque up, now we're done. We could just like leave, and then they just let it get horrible.
So do you think as students, Juliana, please speak, honey.
The experience was very fun, but it was also very informational and learning about all this thing, all the stuff.
I'm glad you had fun because so much of it was so depressing, right? We looked at the 20s of Florida and we looked at the discrepancies in how people lived and were treated and what their opportunities were. And we looked at the devastations that happened by people or by nature. And the ramifications of that was seemingly the same, right? The same people get the short end of the stick, as they say, like a raw deal, like not the respect they deserve or not the help that they need. So, based on what you're saying, Sophia and Cameron, and I'm thinking, what's our next step? Is it political action? Because this was our civic action to take action to bring light to it and make it beautiful. So, if what has to happen is that the government of West Palm Beach has to be more active, then is political action our next step?
I think it would be wise to have some political action just so the government know that, hey, we started this and we would like to be able mm, to honor these people, and we think that you should have a bigger part in this in maintaining and upkeeping the burial site.
I'm with you, Lana. I'm ready to go to the next board meeting, the next commissioners meeting in West Palm Beach. We should
Yeah,
start, right?
Yeah, I do agree that we might like need to go and go to the ask the government, can they help out because we can only do so much as citizens, and like with our limited budget, like we said, we can only do so much. So maybe we do need like some help from the government because they tried to like say they commemorated it, but they didn't really do much. They didn't put much effort into it, and I feel like we having put as much effort into it as we did, I feel like now it like makes it less of it's like less on my conscience because if me having like because I didn't know that was a memorial, but like having known that was a memorial and having known it was in the condition that it was in and then just leaving it there, it just didn't feel right to me. Like it felt like we needed to fix it. It was not okay to like leave those people like that. So us having like gone out there and worked and like done all the things we did, I feel like everyone here just did a great job, you know?
You sure did. You did a great job.
I
So
have
I Cameron, and I feel that it should be like a shared part with the like civic and government responsibilities. Like I feel like it would be very good for like political leaders in our community to bring recognition to it and to help maintain it and put in the work that we did, and that we should continue to like do this as like a yearly thing for Conniston to go back there and check up on it and see the work that we've done and like reclean it and like continue to maintain it.
Great idea, Piper. That's really a great idea. Noel?
I wholeheartedly agree with Cameron, and I think that not only us, but the government and the community as a whole needs to step in and try our best to make sure to keep up with it and um, keep going with um, making it better and um, on other projects too.
Right. Well, they are, that's good, Noel. And actually what you said was really important because from the City Parks and Rec Department, they said, yeah, we really have to fix the arboretum and repair that roof. And so there's that whole section that's that they know they have to do now, and they're inspired to do it because we took some action.
When I
So we,
think about this, I think about what us students could do, and we made a pretty big difference in making it look prettier and nicer and more welcoming. But think of what we could do if the government helped us, what we can do to make this be more noticed and help people.
that's a good question. Good idea there, Annie. I think you're onto something.
Yeah, and I agree with Noel and Annie, like how they were saying the government can help us, and how Noel was bringing up the idea of maybe like every year or maybe every other year, Conniston can come back and check up on the park. Because when Sophia and Noel and Piper and I were like brainstorming together before we had started planting, when we had first like seen the park, we were thinking like we knew it was like a bad situation and that like we needed to do some stuff to help fix it up, but we were thinking because we didn't have like a huge budget to like replace all the benches and cut back every single vine and fix all these things, we were thinking, well, maybe we could try to get some help from the city or do like a fundraiser and stuff so that we could bring not only bring acknowledgement to the project but also like try to help fund it so that we could do more to help these people and maybe even help like the other mass burial sites in Florida, like around, like when people see that we're doing something, they might be inclined to help out on their own.
That's great, Cameron. That's a great thought. Well, Ms. Melius, would you like to say anything? You've been sitting with us. You're part of this project. You've offered so much support and help throughout the whole.
I think it's really important to have our students recognize that they can make a difference and that working in the community is a big, important part of their lives. And learning it in middle school, I hope will keep with them and they'll continue to look out for the community and keep community service as part of their lives.
Which I hope so too. And they did get community service, I should tell you. They did get community service hours for this because why not? You sure deserved it. I mean, I wish there could be more than that. But more than that is the pride you have in knowing that you've actually inspired a movement and made a difference and beautified a place that was in great need of some honor and dignity.
Can I say something?
Absolutely.
All right. I just want to say thank you to Miss Polito, the 28 Storm Coalition, Miss Milius, Miss Tomas, and everybody, because the reason we were able to do this is because of everybody helping out, all you guys, and students. We can do a lot of things, but we're limited to a lot of options, and I feel like this was such a great idea, for something that we could help out with the community with, and Miss Polito introduced us to this idea. When I first didn't know of the storm of 28. I didn't know. I mean, I didn't know that much. I knew some information about, a decent amount of information about segregation back in the day, but I didn't know a lot to the detail until Miss Polito said, "Hey, we have a club to help a memorial site for a 28 store." I was like, "What is that?" And then, well, basically, I just came to the class and then we learned all about it. And the 28 store of the I think who gave us a grant again?
Education
But
Foundation.
yeah, the Education Foundation when they gave us a grant, and we were all ready to do this. I would just want to thank everybody for giving us this opportunity to do this because this was a really great thing we could do. Because even though we're limited to a lot of options, it's still this is a great thing we can do. And thank you to Miss Polito and everybody that gave us the opportunity.
Thanks so much, Leo. That's very kind of you. Very thoughtful.
Uh, I honestly agree with Leo because this, like, none of us could have done this alone. Like, we all like agreed to do this, and we all did this as a team, as a group. Not only did we help out for those who have died, and which was very sad, but we have also learned a lot from this. Before I started this Reflect and Remember project, I had no idea there was a hurricane that occurred in 1928 until I came across you guys. And I feel like I've learned so much, and it really has changed and impacted my life by a lot.
Thank you, Cindy. I'm so glad to hear that. That's great. Any other last thoughts, guys?
I really agree with Leonardo. We couldn't have done this without you, without your influence, without you like bringing up the fact and encouraging us to, discover and learn, and it was just really amazing. And I'm really grateful for the opportunity, as I'm sure we all are.
Thanks, Cameron.
Definitely.
Thanks. Noelle, you'll be happy to know that Mr. Ray says, you know what, we really need a butterfly garden here. I said, you have one. You have the design in your hands. So it's happening. It's going to happen. Well, Mr. Knowles, I think we've, unless anyone has any last things that they want to share, I think we've expressed what we've done and how we feel about it and what should happen next. Mr. Knowles?
All right, I'm here. Can you hear me now?
Yes, yes.
All right, great. I'm sorry, a little technical difficulty there. But no, thank you all. Thank you, Ms. Polito. Thank you to amazing students over at Conniston Middle School. This project was more than incredible. So I just remember when you called me out there, when you all actually went out there for the beautification of the historical site. When I brought my daughter out and just to be part of that experience. So just thank you for making me part of this project. And I'm more than honored that you said in the beginning that it was through the Summer Institute that you were introduced to this concept and made the connection to the Storm of 28 Coalition and how you brought it back into the school. And while I felt that this was extremely valuable to kind of facilitate this particular session and include this in this year's Institute as an example of what our educators can do at their schools. And how they can take the work that we kind of facilitate and what we present during the Summer Institute and bring it into our schools. And how you took a project and how you infused, the social sciences, math, and you brought in science, you brought in all of these other topics within this one particular segment. And what was incredible is just the impact that it had on students. And you brought students in to express that impact that it made. And how you brought in the community engagement piece, you brought in art, and you brought in multiple learning styles, which kind of was conducive to the learning preferences and learning styles to a whole slew of students. You even, did accommodations for ELL learners, etc. And what's important here is during the Summer Institute, yes, we have a very, very specific focus on African American, and Caribbean studies and just that content area. And you exemplify how this work, even though we focus on one particular segment of history, how it benefits all students. And you had a diverse group of students who worked in and participated in this particular project. And I just thank you for showing that and making sure that you included student voice and providing their feedback and how this benefited and impacted them. And also another aspect of it as well is that when we predicate all this on the multicultural approaches by Dr. James Banks, and you kind of brought this from the transformative level all the way to that social action, where there was a community engagement, where those kids actually impelled and created change within the community with this particular project. So once again, thank you all for blessing us with your presence and showing an example of the great work that can be done in our classrooms when we take this approach of a social action approach, but also including the history and the experiences. In this case, a traumatic experience, but yet it's an experience, an impact. And this is going to forever change just the perception and the trajectory of these students. So Conniston Middle School, much props, much shout outs. Dr. Ms. Polito, thank you for all your support and all of this work and making sure that you took this back to the classroom to impact and influence and inspire our kids. Once again, thank you so much, Ms. Polito.
Thanks, everybody. Love you guys. Thank you,
All right.
everybody.
All right, peace.
Peace.